2020. So I'm calling the Plan Commission of the City of Wausau to order. The first item on our agenda, well, I guess we should probably take roll call. Just, Melissa, do that? Do you usually? Okay, I guess we don't usually do that, but we have almost everybody here. So the first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the February 18th, 2020, and the March 24th, 2020, the April 9th, 2020, and the May 19th, 2020 meetings. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Bulkin, second by Peckham. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor, having not been at those meetings, I probably should abstain from vote.
Okay. Granted. All right, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor can signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes with one abstention. The second item on our agenda is a public hearing, discussion and possible action on approving a conditional use at 200 Park Avenue to allow for community gardens in a UMU. It's an urban mixed-use zoning district. I guess I would open up the public hearing and invite if we have anyone from REI to talk about that project. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Tom Renz, REI, 4080 North 20th Avenue. It's good to be back out in the public again. And welcome, Ms. Mayor. I'm here on behalf of Jennifer Smith with Bridge Community Clinic. I apologize she couldn't make it. Unfortunately, you said they had a board meeting that was scheduled at the same time this meeting is scheduled, so that those meetings are set hard and fast, and if there's something comes up, I can give her a call. But she's armed me with the information. So the goal is just to replace the gardens that are going to be removed when they do the expansion to the clinic. So this operation's been happening in the neighborhood. We just want to move it over a block to the location of the former building. And there'll be approximately 20 gardens placed in this area. Again, operate similar to the gardens at 3 existing sites in the city of Wausau. So if there's any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to do so.
I'd move to approve as proposed.
Okay, so we have the public hearing open right now. I want to make sure that anybody who would like to speak on this project specifically would come forward. I believe I have to ask that 3 times, so we'll count that as the first. If there's anybody who'd like to speak on this project, last chance. Okay, I would take a motion. Motion from Neal, second from Peckham. Is there any further discussion from the committee? Yes, Bulkin.
We, through block grant, we provided or recommended some funding for this project. I think it's a terrific project, and I think it's going to be, when it's all finished, this is going to be a great asset to redeveloping this neighborhood. Thank you.
Mr. Peckham.
I just had a question. In the text of the description of this that we were given, at first it said there would be no accessory buildings, and then it said there's going to be a shed, and it would make perfect sense for there to be a shed. Sure. Is that the case? Or maybe it's the definition of accessory building or something. But
yeah, the shed it won't have a fixed foundation, and so we're looking at a building as something with a frost wall or a slab on grade. But these are just like the temporary, like Menards sheds. You can see one behind at the gardens over by Trolley Flats.
okay, so no building, but a shed.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
no objection here.
Is there any further discussion? All right, I guess we are ready to vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next up is another public hearing. It's the discussion and possible action on rezoning on 512 Franklin Street from a TF10, that's a 2-flat residential, 10 zoning district, to an NMU, a neighborhood mixed-use zoning district. I will open up the public hearing if there's anybody that would like to come forward and discuss it. If the project owner would like to chat as well. Okay.
So I'm Greg Shield. I'm the person hoping for this opportunity. I live in the house across the alley from there, and we've been looking at that house for 30 years and always kind of hoped that it would become up for sale out of the situation that was. It's now up, and so I'm proposing the idea of putting my office in that space. So we would need to rezone for the office space, and that's what we're proposing today.
Okay, thank you.
I have brought in all the pictures and all the things. I don't know if you've already seen that, so if you have any questions, please let me know.
Yeah. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to speak during this public hearing? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Hi, Jim Force, 515 Franklin Street, essentially across the street from the property where this proposal is being made. This is hard because we need to put personalities aside, and I want to point out that both the proposed seller and the proposed buyer are close friends and good neighbors. But I want to focus on the character of the block and the character of this neighborhood. The other night, I was sitting on the porch, which we can do in this neighborhood because we have nice porches. As evening fell and the boulevard lights came on, the trees are leafing out. It was very quiet. It reminded me of the Garden District of New Orleans. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but it seemed to me that this was a very, very pleasant neighborhood. And it seemed to me that both the the 600 block of McIndoe and the 600 block of Franklin really form a lovely residential neighborhood. I would hate to see the integrity of this neighborhood broken by adopting, excuse me, by adopting this rezoning proposal. A couple of things I pointed out in my letter to you. Once that property is rezoned and the Greg's office is granted, there is no guarantee what happens to that property down the road. Not only is the residential character of the block broken, if you will, but there's no guarantee as to what might move into that property later on. I looked at the zoning regulation, and if I'm correct, there are a number of personal and private services businesses that by right could be located in that property. So I am opposed, and I would hope that the commission would take our concerns about the residential character of this neighborhood into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward? Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the record.
John Andrus, 523 Franklin, 2 houses down from Jim. So I guess I'm just black and white on this. We're a residential neighborhood, and I really can't see an office being in the neighborhood. I mean, why would it be this block and not Adams Street block or 7th Street? Like Jim mentioned, it's going to change the neighborhood and we'll never go back. The other thought I have is once it's done, it's setting precedents. Who says, I don't want to do it with my house? And I'd say, well, you did it with that one, you have to do it with mine as well. So again, residential should be residential. The things I don't know, and I don't know if Greg can address it, is are there going to be clients in the office? So as a financial planning office, I mean, I'm a financial planner. You may see 15 people a week. This means 15 cars. Very busy street on Franklin. So now we have these cars, 5 a day there. If they're using alley, it's going to increase the traffic in the alley. So that's the first concern. So, and then signage, again, beautiful historical homes. We put thousands of dollars in them. We don't want any signs on the houses. So I don't know if there's going to be a sign out front on the building. So there again, residential with a sign, that's where I'm opposed. So thank you.
There.
Hi.
All right, please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Krista Salas, and I am the owner of the current property in question. And I wanted to address a couple points that were brought up by the other people that are opposing this, is that this is actually not a concern that some other kind of office, because I know in compliance with the comprehensive plan that you would look for compatible, businesses. So the business that Greg is proposing is going to, and any signage would be similar to the law office that is on Grant Street, right behind the main house. And it's very pleasing. And I also know that he's not going to have an influx of like 15 cars at a time because he meets with clients one at a time and gives them their attention. So at the most, maybe 2 vehicles would be either on the street, but most of them would park in the alley. And I also want to address an issue that maybe some of my opposing people don't realize, that we have had some security issues there because as the way it is run right now, you have people that might not be there, and we've had several instances where somebody strange that's not supposed to be there has gone up on the porch, checked all the doors, and actually frightened some of the guests that I had when they came back because there was somebody on the porch that was not supposed to be there. So that's another concern, and I think that having a flow of daytime customers such as his, he won't have that issue, and that issue will go away more, and it'll be a nicer looking facility than it is right now. So, and I don't foresee this being a bad precedent because all of the neighbors that are adjacent to this property approve of it, except I know Jim. But everybody else thinks it's a great idea and knows that Greg is a really good renovator, and that he will create a pleasing environment and it'll look just like a nice business, and the sign's not going to be obtrusive. So I don't think that there's any chance that you would approve a dog kennel or some other kind of place. So I don't think it sets a bad precedent. And I think it's just, that's fear, which is false evidence appearing real. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to participate in the public hearing? Oh. Hi there. Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Barbara Ann Force. I live at 515 Franklin Street. I have, in the past, I was the one that rezoned that neighborhood. I've lived in my house since 1971. There was a lot of change. When we moved to town, they were taking down the Plummer Mansion, which we all know is right there. There were houses on Grant Street, which were removed, and that turned into kind of a business sort of thing. So we are the last solidly residential block to the south. All right. Having done that, I've served on the Planning Commission. I've served several times on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I was on the Long Range City Planning Committee. And I know that the things that are brought up are hardship, need, and I think what happens is that this sets precedent. It's a chink in the mortar for that block. There are a lot of other places. Greg, you could have your office in your home.
I couldn't because I'm in that block.
Well, you can have a private business. Jim has a business in our home. He does writing from the house. There's no law against that. You're allowed to have an in-house business.
The SEC does not like it, and I work with the SEC.
Okay, well,
Kind of a problem.
okay. I just think that it is one more parcel that is going to lessen the value. You have a business, then people want to live in a residential neighborhood. It's not residential. I mean, it's one or the other. I don't see why, if there are available places, there is office space at the corner of 4th and Grant that you could have. We have invested in River Life, which will have commercial space. I don't understand why, if there is no need and there is no hardship, that you should change the zoning from residential to, and I believe what the inn has now is a conditional use within that. When Patty Arts in 1985 established the bed and breakfast that was there, It was established not as a bed and breakfast, but as a country inn. So it was owner occupied, it was inspected by the Board of Health. I just think that we're not looking at long range. It's been residential. We've enjoyed having the guests that have stayed next to us, but I don't see the need for a business across the street as opposed to the suites that are part of the Rosenberry Inn. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Please state your name and your address for the record.
Kurt Schubring, 516 Franklin Street. We are right next door to that property, and I support the petition. And I just wanted to say that I know that Greg and his family, they have a well-maintained property, and that would carry over the alley to the potential office. And I believe that long-term, if I recall correctly, one of his sons will be taking over that business. And keeping it residential, in my opinion, does not guarantee that there will not be problems. I think we've all had neighbors in the past that we wish were never our neighbors. So I think it's good. We're going to maintain the character. And I just want to say again, I'm in support, and I did send a letter. I don't know if that arrived.
We did receive it, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Again, Jim Force, 515 Franklin. I just had a question, Greg. How about handicapped accessibility? Is that going to be required at this property?
Yes.
And do you know what that would entail?
You want me to come up there, or should I sit here?
It'd be probably better up.
So, I've already been talking to the building inspector about all these concerns. Ameriprise is a national company, so they have signage requirements that vary from as little as not being able to see by anyone, or as big as this building. And so my plan, the reason I am interested in this property is because it's a $90,000 piece of property. Anyone can afford a $90,000 piece of property. My concern is that somebody buys it and parks a rusting out pickup truck there and doesn't mow the lawn and allows the place to fall apart. And I want to make sure it stays beautiful. And I have a house that's 130 years old, and I've taken it apart and put it back together so that it would remain beautiful. And I want this place that I understand is the oldest building in Marathon County to maintain that beauty and have the neighbors all love the fact that we're there. So I would not put up a sign before I talk to everyone about what the sign would look like. So anybody who has any problems with the Rosenberry Inn sign is across the street in front of the building. So it would be the second sign in the block. But I wouldn't want, if there's enough people upset about the fact that this could change the neighborhood, I'll back away, because I do not want anybody upset. I want this building to be beautiful. And so the way we're going to handle accessibility is those people will park in the alley, and the boardwalk that has been rotting and falling apart for years, I keep replacing boards when they break because I shovel the sidewalk all winter. And so it'll be paved and it'll be level. It'll come up to the level that's required. It's really simple to do that. And so everything I've looked at will work very effectively and be beautiful and will look good. So if there are people who don't like that part of it, and don't like the office being there, then I'll back away. I'm not putting it here because there's no other place to put it. It's just really convenient for me to walk across the alley, and I know the building will be well taken care of as long as I own it or my son owns it. And anyone who has a question about how it looks can simply knock on my door, and we'll fix it. Because for me, this is about keeping the neighborhood beautiful. And I will have, on average, we see 5 people a day on a Monday and a Wednesday. And they will come in hour-and-a-half increments. So there will be maybe 2 cars in the alley, in the parking area at the alley at a time. So 10 cars a day, we get more people who come up our alley for a shortcut than my clients will be. But I won't do this if there's enough discomfort about it. I don't want to raise any issues that would be uncomfortable for the neighborhood.
There. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, I'm Deanne Schubring, 516 Franklin Street. I live next door to the house. Our back door faces the building, and right now it's used for long-term stay for, like nurses and, people who need to stay in the community a little longer for work. Well, and I love Krista, don't take this wrong, but I'd rather have a business there than residents who move in and out every 6 weeks. I've had situations where I felt threatened by dogs that were staying with the renters, and I would think that Greg would take fantastic care of this property. He would make it absolutely beautiful because his home is absolutely beautiful. And I think it would enhance the neighborhood. As far as traffic goes, I'm not worried about a revolving door, because when you're sitting with a client, you're with them for an hour or so, and they go, and then you have another client come in, and there's plenty of parking space in the alleyway. So I am in favor of Greg's proposal, and I hope you agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I just had a question. In my years in working with the city in planning, there was something that was anathema, and that was spot zoning. Is this still the case? I mean, if we were looking at 1012 Franklin Street, would you consider it?
I'm looking at my planners to see what we would.
I thought it was somewhat rhetorical, but I can answer
Okay,
that.
sure.
I mean, I guess the district that it's proposed to go to, neighborhood mixed-use district, I mean, the intent of the district is that it is compatible with residential uses. So, a spot zoning, to me, I guess, is a somewhat derogatory term that would mean that you put like an industrial use in the middle of a residential
No, I
area.
realize that there has to be a buffer, but I just don't see the need for changing zoning when there's no hardship, and it sets precedent. So, thank you.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak? And if you could state your name and your address for the record, please.
David Burke, 520 Franklin Street. I've been living in the same place for 38 years, and the neighborhood hasn't changed a whole lot. It's been residential. Every now and then, there's a business that begins to encroach ever so on the fringes, the periphery, moving in. I can't think of a better neighbor to have than Greg Shield. We've been friends for the entire time that he's been a neighbor, and I'd look forward to him owning another property in the neighborhood. But that being said, Greg's going to retire someday. My concern for the property is what happens to it after Greg is gone. Now, I hope his son takes it over and is successful and spends the rest of his life in our neighborhood. He grew up there, he has a right to be there. But I really don't think that having the door open to it or any future businesses is carte blanche. How many of you have holes in your street that are business related? Or is everybody residential? I don't know that there's a good answer to that. As stated before, it's the people who make the neighborhood, not necessarily the behavior that's conducted inside of it. I'm concerned about the future. I've been in the neighborhood for a long, long time, and I plan to stay there. And I'd like for Greg to be my neighbor for the rest of the time that I'm there. But in the event he isn't, and when he moves on and does something different, then I've got a real concern. There's no checks, no balances, no procedure like this that's going to happen that I'm aware of, that there's any say the neighborhood will ever have again in what goes on in that property. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak during this public hearing? Please state your name and your address for the
My
record.
name is Isaac Shield. I live at 507 Steuben. I'm Greg's son, and I work with him in the business. My intent and plan is when Greg retires that I will buy the practice along with the building from him. So my plan would be, as is his, to keep the neighborhood beautiful. I grew up in the house that Greg owns now, 507 McIndoe. So I know and really appreciate the neighborhood, and I live just 4 blocks from there now, so I would really love to see the neighborhood keep its beautiful appeal as well as the buildings, so that would be my plan and goal for it. So I support this motion. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public hearing? I'll ask it for a second time. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Last time before I close the public hearing on this. All right, this public hearing is now closed. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve this.
A motion by Bulkin,
Second.
second by Brugman. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Alder Neal.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's compelling arguments on both sides of this, and, I can feel for both sides. One thing that has been brought up, I think, very appropriately is the future. There's a lot of talk about, what a great guy and great family this is, and how everybody is sure that they would maintain this property well. I'm sure even Mr. and Mrs. Force would say that, not to put words in your mouth, but you're confident that they would do a nice job with this property. But in the future, maybe even after the son, might leave or move on, then you've got the opportunity for, Lord knows what to apply to go in there. So my question is, and I'm new to the Plan Commission, so I don't know if there's any precedent for this. Is it possible to approve this proposal, this rezoning, and have it expire and revert at any such time as the business that is proposing it leaves the property? And then any future, party that wants to have a business there would have to reapply for rezoning again and state their case. Because those people aren't here tonight, whoever they are. We just have the proposers here. And we don't know who else down the line might want to take stake in that neighborhood too. So I would support putting a sunset on this, contingent on, whenever such time as this business ceases to operate there and it reverts back to its existing zoning. And then we can go through the process again, or not me, but some future Plan Commission might have to do it again. So otherwise, I would probably vote against this.
I'd like to call on Planner Brad.
Thanks. It's a good sentiment. I think we have, discussed that option in the past, and I think we've been cautioned by our legal counsel that zoning stays with the property, not with the property owner. And in a straight zoning district like this, you're not zoning for a specific user, but again, it stays with the property. And we really have been cautioned against time limits or tying it to a specific owner or use. Again, we need to follow the letter of our own ordinances in regards to zoning. So I think we've always cautioned against that type of action for zoning.
Alder Peckham.
Thank you. I normally, anybody who's watched or observed Planning Commission, I'm normally a pretty big proponent of allowing free enterprise to thrive and do well. I have some misgivings about this, especially in terms of its quality residential nature and just the potential of losing that. I think that could be a negative. I do have a question on how the parking would be handled, and I don't know if that would be Mr. Shield answering that or staff, but I believe I read there could be 2 to 3 employees, and maybe the owner-operator would be counted among one of those, but how many vehicles would be expected to be there, and where would they be? Would they all park off the alley, or how would that be handled?
The space back there now is a paved area that was done back when the Artses put the property in place. There's room for 5 cars there now. Because I live there, I won't ever be driving my car across the alley, so I won't ever put a car there. Isaac is moving up the street. We'll live on Franklin, so he may drive his car there on days that he would be driving off to see clients. We sometimes see them out of our home, out of the office. So, and right now, we're thinking there would probably be 2 staff people, so there could be up to 5 cars there a day at a particular time. And since I live across the alley and have room for 6 cars in my own parking area, on days when we knew there might be more activity, we would have either staff people or Isaac Park in my area. So we have room for 10. And then there's the street in front, which I don't think we'll ever use. The curb there is like 8 inches high, and it's really steep, and it doesn't make any sense. So I would encourage all of my clients to park in the alley. The rise from the parking area to the front door for wheelchair would be like a 1/8 of an inch per foot. So I mean, it's almost completely flat there. Coming off the street, it's really steep and it's really goofy. So only people who came for the first time would probably park there because they'd get Google and they'd find their way and be in the front of the building. But from then I'd say easier, quicker, no worry about traffic, park off the back. So there's plenty of stuff. That's why I considered it, because we have everything right there to make it work easy, and it wouldn't infringe on anybody else's space or property. And my goal would be to keep people off this street because it's kind of narrow there, and there's a lot of traffic on Franklin, and the stoplight there is ridiculous. If you're going to avoid that stoplight going east and west, you're a wise person. I never go through there because it's 8 seconds green and 39 years red, so I avoid that. So I do the same with my clients,
Note to
teach them
self.
that.
Is there any other discussion from the committee? Are we prepared to vote then? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is that 3? I might need to, and all those opposed? I might need to take a roll call here, unless Melissa got it. Can you record?
Tom and Pat.
Or no? Everyone else is aye. Okay, so I guess that motion passes. It will go to the city council meeting on June 9th, where you can also discuss this. Okay. Moving on to item number 4, we'll open another public hearing. Discussion and possible action on rezoning 516 Steuben Street from TF10 to flat residential zoning to District 2 UMU urban mixed-use zoning. I guess I'll open up this public hearing. If there's a project manager that would like to speak to this. Thank you. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Greg Zaromsky, 1302 6th Street, Wausau. I'm the owner of Peterson Kramer Funeral Home and the property that the filling station restaurant encompasses. Some years ago, we purchased 516 Steuben Street and raised the duplex that was there and built a 6-car garage. As I examine my options for an exit strategy, it's been suggested to me that perhaps we change that zoning so that as we have a large parcel of property right now, that be encompassed in that property as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to? Doesn't look like it, but I will ask 3 times if there's anyone that would like to speak to this topic. I'll ask for a second time if anyone would like to speak. A 3rd time? All right, I will close this public hearing on this, on 516 Steuben Street, and I would entertain a motion from the body. A motion by Neal. Second by Peckham. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? This passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, item number 5 on the agenda is our next meeting date and future agenda items for consideration. I don't have either of those in front of me, but I assume we'll be in touch with you. I guess I would take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Bulkin. Second by Brugman. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.